here we go.
Welcome to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast. Pat and Scott back in here to finish out our preseason rankings, disparities. I think there were some things that we were, alike on it in our opinions and ADPs and all that agreed. But we'd like to talk about the reasons that we feel a certain pro-con, for, against kind of way with all our positions. We did quarterbacks, tight ends. We did a few of the running backs. And now we're going to talk about the wide receiver position, which has become the Cadillac of the NFL. And definitely now you're looking at a lot of teams that do that passing offense, and they just seem to really push the ball down the field. It's that modern game, and it's starting to leave some other positions behind it and transfer them into almost wide receiver positions as well. So very important that we touch on these and talk about what we liked and didn't like. Pat, feels good to be back. I did, unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, was on vacation with spotty Wi-Fi and no hardwired internet, and the rest is history. Glad I didn't get Wally pipped by our friend DJ, but he did a phenomenal job in my absence, and it was great to hear somebody else for once talk about stuff and really hear you and he go back and forth about the drafting of different players and the rationale. I think it was very refreshing, and just hope it doesn't happen again.
Well, then don't ever go on vacation again. I don't know what to tell you. No, I'm just kidding. No, we like I said, we do this as just a fun side thing, something that we enjoy getting together, talking about football. So if one of us can't be around, I was going to try to do the show by myself, like the one you did last year when I was on vacation around Christmas time.
Yep, some of us can handle it, some of us can't.
But mock drafts are a little bit difficult to do with just one person. It gets a little boring hearing one person talk about the same player over and over again. And so I wanted to, get one of our longtime league mates on, and a lot of the guys in our league that do listen to the podcast have given us suggestions and suggested that we bring them on to talk about things. And I know that DJ is a real big football fan, a real big college guy, so I knew that there'd be some insightful rookie talk going on with him as well. So it was a good time, and he did a great job, and I'll thank him again for coming on when we see him this Sunday at our draft.
Yeah, man, he knows college. He definitely likes him young, that's for sure.
Oh, man. So like you said, today we're going to hop into our wide receiver talks. Like you said, we do have some pretty big discrepancies between the two of us. And like, we saw with the running backs, you being a little bit higher or lower and sort of averaging out with where I'm at. A lot of our guys do sort of line up pretty close with the ADP, with where they're going in drafts. You may like some guys a little bit more. And I think that's exactly what, the ADP kind of proves to you, is that, one of these guys that's drafted may take a certain player higher or lower, and then somebody else drafting in a different league may grab a different guy. And that's, all these averages sort of work out to where guys are going. And like I said, we kind of have them in a fairly similar order, but, maybe a little bit higher or lower on some guys that we're going to talk about today. Before we jump into that, just want to mention real quick our jersey giveaway once again. We are giving away that signed Darius Slay jersey. All you have to do to enter that contest is follow the show, write us a review, send us a screenshot of both the follow and the review with your full name and address to our email address, which is the9routeFFB@gmail.com. And that will enter you for that Darius Slay jersey giveaway, which we will be picking here shortly within about a week or so. So get yourself entered into that contest and win yourself a nice autographed jersey.
Yeah, definitely a beautiful jersey with the autograph. You get that maybe thrown in a frame or straight up hanging in your man cave, your she shed. Show your support for Darius Slay, for the Eagles, just for football in general. It's a nice piece to have in the collection, and you get to tell everybody that you won it on a just by listening to a podcast. So wouldn't hurt to like and subscribe, and again, go through our, likes and take the pictures and just let us know you guys care enough to do that. And again, we'll hook you up with a jersey.
All right. So You ready to jump into these wide receivers?
Wide receivers.
I'm going to go ahead and read our consensus rankings real quick. Numbers 1 through 30. We'll hit some of the later wide receivers later on in the next episode. So who we have is Justin Jefferson, number 1. Cooper Kupp, number 2. Stephon Diggs ranked at 3. Jamar Chase at 4. Devontae Adams, 5. Mike Evans at 6. CeeDee Lamb at 7. Tyreek Hill at 8. Deebo Samuel, 9. T. Higgins at 10. Michael Pittman Jr. at 11. A.J. Brown rounding out the top 12. Wide receiver 13 is Keenan Allen. Then Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson, Allen Robinson, Jerry Jeudy, Marquise Brown, Jalen Waddle, Cortland Sutton, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, and Darnell Mooney to round out the top 24, and then some other guys that we're going to talk about. We're going to hit through 30 today. So our 25 through 30 are Brandon Cooks, Amari Cooper, Michael Thomas, Juju Smith-Schuster, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Rashad Bateman. We're going to kind of roll these in order of ADP to kind of keep a clean order for them. So the first one we're going to hit is Terry McLaurin from the Washington Commanders. He is currently going as the wide receiver 14. You have him ranked at 17, which is fairly close to ADP. I have him at wide receiver 25. The reason I am so low on McLaurin personally is McLaurin's always been a talented guy, but he's honestly been somewhat of a disappointment the last 2 years after finishing as the wide receiver 28 in his rookie year. And I get that you can easily make the case that his lack of performance is directly tied to poor quarterback play. He's had guys like Case Keenum, Dwayne Haskins, and Taylor Heineke throwing him the ball over the last 2 years. But let's not pretend that Carson Wentz is some huge upgrade in this offense. In his 6-year career, Carson Wentz has never supported a top 15 wide receiver. His best pass catcher finish was Zach Ertz when he was the tight end 2 in 2018. But Ertz's numbers as an overall pass catcher, like if you combined him with the other wide receivers, he would have ranked outside the top 10 at wide receiver that year. Last season, McLaurin was the 18th highest graded wide receiver according to PFF and only managed 130 targets, being the top option on his team. Now, I know the Washington football team last year did not throw the ball a ton, but when you have a guy like Terry McLaurin to only get him 130 targets in a season with as talented as he is, that to me seems like maybe the Commanders weren't as committed to him as maybe the talent suggests or previous production suggests. But either way, to only have 130 targets as the team's top option was fairly low. Add in rookie Jahan Dotson, healthy Curtis Samuel, J.D. McKissick, and it's really hard for me to see McLaurin's target share go up once Carson Wentz sort of finds his favorite guy to go to. He goes to him a lot, and that seems to be not Terry McLaurin so far in the preseason, so that also has me a little bit worried. But I think at wide receiver 14, that's just too high for somebody who's, like I said, never finished inside of I think wide receiver 21 was his highest finish of his career. To pick him at wide receiver 14 when he's never finished that high and doesn't really have like I said, a marketable QB upgrade, that just seems like you're taking him at his tip-top ceiling. Like he's not going to finish any higher than wide receiver 14. So, why would we draft him there when there's no room for him to finish higher than where we picked him?
As far as me, I'm not trying to so much root for the other team, but to see what he has been able to do over the past couple seasons, where third year in the league, a back-to-back 1,000 yards receiving seasons. And again, that it is tied into the quarterback play a little bit. And I think to say that compared to Case Keenum, it's not the Case Keenum that helped to roll the Vikings into NFC Championship status. It's not Taylor Heineke that, looked pretty impressive in a tough playoff loss. When these guys were given a larger sample size, they sucked. I mean, Carson Wentz, do I have a soft spot for him? Absolutely, I do. And I do wish him well this time around, and maybe he'll get it right. But last year, he was a pretty reasonable quarterback. I think the expectations were that he was going to come in and be 2017 MVP status Carson Wentz. And right now, he's not that guy. If he ever gets it back, probably not. No. Some of that's his fault. And some of that is the expectations and what's around him. Now, you mentioned about how he never supported a 1,000-yard receiver. And I do feel that, yes, that is some of his doing. And it's also the way that the offenses ran for Philadelphia and even last year with Indianapolis, where they kind of took the ball out of his hands almost halfway through the season, and he hadn't been doing anything wrong. I know the ownership soured on him real quick, and then you get into the final game of the season for Indy, and Carson Wentz actually gets too involved, and they go away from the running game. So again, it looked like he lost that chance to get them into the playoffs and all that. For Terry McLaurin, I think the biggest thing is when you look over the last couple of years, he's had 134 and 130 targets back-to-back years. So he's definitely the focal point of the offense. You know for a fact, too, with the contract they just gave him to make sure that he's their guy, I think that's a big part of it. I'm not scared of the other wide receiver. I think Dotson and he will play complementary in a sense to each other and help to stretch the field for each other. Maybe Dotson is a little bit more of the playmaker, but is he going to have a little trouble here and there getting adjusted to a full NFL slate? Yeah, probably. The tight end situation there is murky. You've got a John Bates. You got Logan Thomas coming back off a tough injury from last year. We know, considering what's just gone on in the running back room with all the drama around Antonio Gibson and obviously all the drama and get well soon Brian Robinson, that may change some parts of the dynamic with the playbook for a few minutes. So again, we're not 100% sure. Maybe Gibson gets a chance to go back to his role and stay healthy. McKissick's still there. We just saw Jared Patterson get cut, part of cut downs that are happening kind of as we speak. So there could be some major news, especially on the wide receiver front. But I do feel like Terry McLaurin has the potential to show that he's a true wide receiver one. I think with a little more confidence at the quarterback position, that will help. Whether or not Ron Rivera and that offense decide to go that route, we shall see. They're definitely looking up as far as things go. I just can't see him being too far removed from being a top 15, top 20 wide receiver. And again, I think the quarterback was an upgrade this year compared to what he's had for the last couple of years.
Yeah, so you said that you think he would finish somewhere between wide receiver 15 and 20. I'm looking at the list of our rankings here and the ADP, and there's a bunch of guys here that I think if 15-20 is a reasonable expectation, don't you think that guys who are being drafted behind him, like Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, like Michael Pittman, like Mike Williams, or whoever the guys are, even that you may have higher, Allen Robinson, if you're going to pick a wide receiver in the spot where you're taking Terry McLaurin, wouldn't you pick one of these guys who has the potential to finish as the top 5 wide receiver rather than where's McLaurin's potential? You know what I mean? Like that's why I don't like him very much. I don't want a guy who I think on a good year is going to be able to finish at the wide receiver 15, and on a bad year may finish what's he's finished at wide receiver 28. Before, like I don't want a 15 to 28 guy. If I'm taking a wide receiver here, he's going to be my wide receiver 2. I want a guy that has the potential to be a top, 5-6 wide receiver on the season.
Okay, but I think some of that, like again, you just said with Michael Pittman, people that are drafting Michael Pittman behind Terry McLaurin, I would love to be in their league, to be honest, because like that to me is insanity. You are drafting 2 Bengals wide receivers probably in the first 12 wide receivers. So that's trying to say that offense is capable of that. When you look at what like passing offenses do nowadays, like for teams and for like the amount of yardage, Tampa Bay, the Chargers, so on and so forth, even Kansas City, if you're throwing for 5,000 yards as a quarterback, your running back's probably not receiving for 1,000 yards. You're putting up a lot of yards. Like these guys are going to get it. I see something along those lines. Like last year, Wentz had close to 3,600 yards. When it came to pass attempts, he was 16th, and he was behind, he's behind Joe Burrow, okay, and obviously he had a way more dynamic offense. He threw for almost 1,100 yards more than he did. Some of these guys to me are out there that are going to get scooped up. Now, we're going to talk a point because we're almost flip-flopped on the next guy with Jalen Waddle, who Last year, I actually had him on my team. He kind of helped carry me through some of those weeks where, again, he just turned into like Joe PPR, and it was like, oh my God, he's getting like 10 catches a game for 60 yards, maybe a touchdown, which was great. It was awesome. And you look at what that team did. They upgraded heavily at wide receiver amongst other skill positions and tried to make that offense more dynamic, different coaching staff. I think with McLaurin, it's more where he's falling is the expectation of the coaching staff, the play calling, the scheme is possibly similar. I think people feel that a lot of people do like Carson Wentz, and I think they feel that they've upgraded heavily at the quarterback position. They feel that he was in not on a bad team, but he was given basically like one season to audition. And again, I think the management soured on him and things like that. Do I think Terry McLaurin should be drafted ahead of CeeDee Lamb? No, not at all. Now, you mentioned a couple guys in Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. I don't know what to expect out of that offense. And I know it sounds stupid. And it's like, well, obviously they have those guys, and now they have Russell Wilson, and they have, there's going to be a lot of adjusting for that team. Again, you have some new faces and new places. Does Sutton stay healthy? Does Jeudy stay healthy? Like things like that, where some of these guys have taken their knocks preseason, last season. Am I drafting them ahead of Chris Godwin? Kinda. And again, with me, that's an injury concept where he's still getting over, is he going to be back to full speed? Mike Evans is Brady's guy. Your quarterback just took basically almost like 2 weeks off for a summer vacation. Like it's hard to tell what's going to happen.
Were you hanging out with him? Is that where you guys were?
Yeah, me and Tom were just, throwing him back down the Jersey Shore. Don't tell anybody, please. God, I don't want to get the guy in trouble. But no, I mean, all kidding aside, like to me, he's in that range of, do I draft him ahead of Keenan Allen? No. Do I draft him ahead of Mike Williams? Maybe. Again, I'm not the biggest. I don't hate him, but I'm not the biggest Mike Williams guy. He's ahead of Amari Cooper. Yeah, he's DJ Moore. I've never really been sold on him, and now they're making changes, new quarterback. I think it's the safety concept of kind of knowing what to expect. It's that especially if I went not zero running back, if I went heavy, maybe my first 2-3 picks were running back, McLaurin might still be there. Depending on what kind of a league you're in, I think I'd probably try to go for him. If I went zero running back and was banging out wide receivers and tight ends right off the bat, he'd probably be in my first 3 or 4 picks, because I think a lot of people look at that. Well, he's a wide receiver 1. He's going to get that. You got a guy who got 130 and 134 targets again in back-to-back years. And I think that is, you're not too worried about him, health-wise or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, he gets about 8 targets a game, which is right up there with some of the heavy hitters. He's now Cooper Kupp, but he's definitely up there with some of your bigger name guys. I think he's a little underrated because of how poorly Washington plays offensively. And I think that's one of the bigger factors. So he's one of those like diamonds in the rough. But if you said, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin right off the bat, no, I'll go Terry McLaurin 100%.
Fair enough. So you mentioned in your little spiel there about McLaurin, you mentioned a little bit about Waddle, but he's another guy that we were going to talk about. He's going at right behind McLaurin at the wide receiver 15. I have him at 16, right about where he's going. You're a little bit lower on him at 23. You have anything else that you want to sort of elaborate on when it comes to Waddle, why you have him down a little bit lower, or are you good with that? You just want to move on?
I mean, just quickly, obviously, when you bring somebody like Tyreek Hill into the locker room, and again, I think some people look at him as maybe the avid fan, or people don't quite, unfortunately, pay attention. Now, granted, he did this all with Kansas City, but out of 4 out of his 6 years, the guy put up 1,000-yard seasons and touchdowns and big plays. And I mean, we've all had where he's won an entire week. And I mean, he's had 50-point weeks for you and stuff like that. You're not bringing a guy in like this to just be complimentary to Waddle. Like, there's just no way. And until Tyreek Hill loses his speed, if and or when that happens anytime soon, he's only 28. I think that would be something that would make teams, let alone his own team, adjust. But you're putting him into a lineup that when it came to, just overall wide receiver wise, Waddle had 140 targets, Mike Gesicki 112. And then after that, and he was banged up a lot with only 8 games started, 10 games total, was Devontae Parker with 73. And after that, you're just going through a who's who of, hey, can you play? He gets definitely pushed down the list a little bit. I can't see that. Plus you brought in Chase Edmonds, who we know is a pass catching threat, and a lot of his work last year for Waddle was underneath. I mean, he didn't even average 10 yards of reception. He was just under at 9.8. Touchdowns weren't quite there. He could be more. I think he's going to benefit people more in the red zone, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, yes, he still finished with 1,000 yards, and I don't think he's bad. It's going to be interesting to see how that team really runs that offense again. And you're bringing a coach that has that, offensive, young guru. You hear all those terms, and everybody saw what happened with Deebo Samuel last year. And you're thinking now, if Waddle gets used like that, Waddle might be a top 3 wide receiver. But are the chances there? I don't know. And again, quarterback play, everybody's saying Tua looks awesome. We'll see. I just think the Hill big time cuts into him. Brought in some other skill position players to kind of offset that load. But if you're going to spread the wealth that much on offense, it could be a very treble offense where a lot of guys are really good, but nobody is that monster standout. And again, of all the wide receivers, to me, it's going to be Tyreek Hill 10 times out of 10.
All right, let's move on to DJ Moore. He's coming off the board as the 18th wide receiver. I have him ranked at 17. You have him at 25. So, again, you spoke on him a little bit when we were talking about McLaurin. I know, just from knowing you, that you are not the biggest Baker Mayfield fan. I know that the Mayfield signing, or trade, I should say, did not move the needle for you on DJ Moore at all. Did you have him a little bit lower in your rankings and move him up to 25, or has he just been at 25 and you're just like, I don't really care who the starter is? I know what I'm getting from DJ Moore.
He just doesn't do anything for me. I think he gets overdrafted a little bit because people are expecting a next level. Like last year, the guy had a great season. He almost had 100 receptions, a little over 1,100 yards. The touchdowns quite have never been there. And I mean, obviously, we know for parts of his career and parts that are not anything under his control. You have a certain running back down there who is considered the end-all, be-all of the offense. He's a guy that if I was forced by value to take, I would take him. And knowing that you just went from either having maybe Sam Darnold to Baker Mayfield again, who I'm not big on. Maybe it was Cleveland with him. I just don't see it. I just feel like he doesn't have that pop, that ability as a quarterback. But I mean, when you look at, when you're looking at guys like, again, DJ Moore, he gets a little bit of target action, not enough to really make you happy, like in the red zone. He makes plays. I don't think he's a bad football player. It's just, he's just not my guy. Like, and he would never be my guy. Like I would take him again. I am 25th. So if it came around to me and I'm looking at him, do I take him over Courtland Sutton? Yes, I do. And the reason being because I do know he is their wide receiver 1. Yeah. Carolina just traded for Laviska Shenault. Like, that doesn't scare me at all. A healthy McCaffrey getting 100 targets out of the backfield, that's something that maybe scares you. They don't have a lot of killers on that offense when it comes to, the tight end position is like, they just don't really seem to have a lot of action. Or maybe Robbie Anderson finally breaks out. Maybe Terrence Marshall kind of shows that you are just that much better, than what you are. I don't know. But to me, it's like, hey, he's a good player, but I just don't, it doesn't move the needle for me. I don't hate him. I wouldn't, again, if it was round 6 and for some reason he's still there, do I probably take him? Yeah, at that point I would take him, but I'm not going out of my way to go, I feel I won my draft because I got DJ Moore.
All right. So let's move on to Courtland Sutton. I have him ranked all the way up at 15. You have him at 26. He's currently going right in between there at the wide receiver 20. So, again, one of those guys who I'm high on, you're low on, but the consensus has him, basically exactly where he's going in drafts. And I guess I'll take the lead on this one since you just talked about, all those other guys. So, for me, Sutton finished as the wide receiver 46 last year, and currently he's going as the wide receiver 20. That is the biggest jump in assumed production of any wide receiver in the league that played, not injury, like guys that played 16 or 17 games last year. I personally believe that the hype is real with the Broncos offense. You saw what the Rams did last year by bringing in Matthew Stafford to an already solid team. I think the Broncos are in the same exact boat this season. Now, I'm not saying that Sutton is going to be like Cooper Kupp or anything like that. He's not going to finish as the wide receiver 1 overall. But, I mean, I also don't think that that's completely out of the question. I mean, he's got the ability to do so, and now he's playing with the best quarterback that he's ever had in his career. Again, there are some people out there, I think, including yourself, who don't think that Russell Wilson is that guy necessarily. But even if he's not the wide receiver 1 overall, Sutton, he's going to be the DK Metcalf role in this offense. So from, what Russell Wilson's used to, he's more of a DK Metcalf. He's big, he's fast, he can win 50-50 balls, and he's just the most talented wide receiver on his team. All respect to Jerry Jeudy. Sutton is a guy that oozing with physical ability. And Tim Patrick's recent injury only means that there are more targets to go around for everyone on the team, including Sutton, including Jeudy. But, definitely Sutton should get a few of those. I think it makes more sense to draft Sutton where Metcalf was going last year, which was up around the wide receiver 7, than where he's going at wide receiver 20. I'm kind of splitting the difference and putting him at 15. But he is definitely a guy. I've done one live draft already. I've done a couple of online, drafts, and he's a guy that I think I have on every team that I've drafted so far. And he's a guy that I'm targeting in every draft because, to me, if you look at what Cooper Kupp was last year, a guy who was talented, had put up, a decent season, and then got a massive upgrade at quarterback. That's the kind of thing that it takes to jump from, where Courtland Sutton was to where Cooper Kupp finished the year last season. Again, I'm not saying he's the wide receiver 1 overall, like lock this in, like that's where I have him ranked. There's obviously some wiggle room built into where I have him ranked, but I may even have to move him up more because I'm looking at my rankings and there's guys that have been available to me in drafts that I'll take Sutton over, guys like Deontay Johnson. No thanks. Like, give me Courtland Sutton in that every single time. That's just the way I just feel like he's going to have a huge, if we had like our like a stamp, like this is the guy that, I'm planting my flag on this year, it would be Courtland Sutton. That's how much I believe in him.
Well, yeah.
All right, you're convinced. Let's move on now.
No. I honestly, I think I kind of lean. I lean Jeudy more in that offense, and
there's plenty of people that do. That's completely reasonable. I get it.
Well, my thing is this too. Like, okay, last year, and again, I know there were some questionable quarterback play things with, you had Teddy Bridgewater was the best guy they had. Drew Lock played there, and obviously he's no longer there. He's now in Seattle. Denver was an okay football team. They weren't anything special. They weren't going to make the playoffs. The coach was a goner. You had all that stuff. So you have Nathaniel Hackett, who basically Denver brought in the hopes they could get Aaron Rodgers. He didn't want to go there. They got Russell Wilson. He looks like he's kind of just going through the motions and wants to cement his legacy and things like that there. I'm not a big Russ fan. I know some people, live and die by him, and that's cool. Again, if you're giving me the two to pick from, I feel like, to me, Jeudy is going to definitely be the better play there. Now, do both have a chance to be, 1,000 wide receivers, yada, yada? Absolutely. Jeudy didn't, he had some injury issues, different things like that. But I think for like a smaller sample size and things like that, he's not bad. I mean, the fact, like last year, I'm looking at one thing, and again, this could be the quarterback play, and it doesn't go into a ton of stuff, but he was targeted 98 times, and he only caught 58 passes. Now, he did catch them for over 13 yards a catch. Touchdowns weren't there. He was barely used in the red zone, and his catch percentage was under 60%. Little things like that. I mean, you would hope that, again, maybe that was just him looking at the quarterback play and maybe nailing stuff in. I don't know. I'm not there for every business decision a wide receiver makes. But at the end of the day, I think he's talented. Yes. Is he going to probably be a top 25 wide receiver? Probably. I'm interested to see too how much the dynamic duo at the running backs plays into that offense too. New quarterback, new coach could be beneficial to him, sure. He is just one season removed from an ACL tear, so you just want to make sure that everything's on the up and up. And last year could have just been him getting his feet back under him, literally, and then to maybe turn around and come out this year. Does he have top 10 potential? Absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt. I think it all goes through the quarterback, but I just kind of lean Judy a little bit more on that level because I think he's more explosive, where Sutton could be a little more of and it could work out this way. I mean, if you're looking at the two wide receivers, you say, well, Judy is Lockett, Sutton is DK Metcalf. Then it's a whole different story. If that's the offense and that's the way it's being run, then, we're both probably wrong. And you're talking about maybe two top 10 wide receivers. But at the end of the day, I would, again, Sutton's in that DJ Moore role. Like, if he's there and it's worth it, I would take him. But I'm not going out of my way to get him. And like you said, you're higher on him, so you might even be trying to jump around to get him and be more satisfied with that pick. More power to you. I'm not jumping for Judy either because I think they're going to cannibalize themselves a little bit with targets. And then after them, yes, Tim Patrick goes out. You got some camp darlings that are going to get factored in there. The tight end position is always a threat to snipe some touchdowns and vulture you there, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I could live with Sutton. He's in my top 30, borderline top 25. But no, I'm not going out of my way. And I think Judy is the more explosive player, and I think that'll transition a little bit more through the season.
I think you're wrong, but that's part of why we do this. I'm interested in seeing how this goes this season. Like I said, if you're right and Judy is the guy and Sutton sort of the 1B role in the offense and Judy's kind of the guy that gets a lot of the targets, then a lot of my fantasy teams are going to suffer. So I really hope I'm right on this one because I have been drafting Sutton everywhere. So, I think we probably beat this horse as dead as it's going to get. So
ironically, he's a Bronco. There you go. No, and again, maybe it's just that too, that he's he's got a very deep, like, average depth of target. Like he's catching borderline, like almost like a tight end would, like where he's going about 15 yards downfield, turning, making the catch, not getting a lot of yak after the play, no touchdowns. If that goes up, if he gets into double-digit touchdowns, which maybe regression and progression kind of leans you in that direction, then Pat, you might be winning a lot of leagues, pal.
That's the goal, isn't it?
I have no idea. Wait, yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our next guy. I don't want to run out of time before we get to probably going to be your favorite guy to talk about on this show. So the last wide receiver that we are, more than a few spots off on in our top 30 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's currently going as the wide receiver 28. I have him a little bit lower at 32. You have him all the way up at 22.
It's definitely like probably honeymoon effect, I think, more than anything, where, you got to pretty much like around your trade deadlines, you're about 2/3 of the way through your season last year. And you're like, man, I got to make a move. I need something to help get me over the hump or to, just pull away from the rest of the pack. And if you picked this guy up in fantasy, he won a lot of leagues for people. Just looking at some of like the concepts overall from week 13. And this was, everybody's, it was the injuries. It was DeAndre Swift went down and Hawkinson went down, and they really didn't have anybody established as a true wide receiver one. From week 13, 10 catches, 12 targets, 86 yards and a touchdown. 8 catches on 12 targets, no touchdowns. 8 on 11, 9 on 11, 8 on 11, 8 on 10. 4 touchdowns to finish out the season. This guy was putting up 25, 30 points a game like it was nothing. He had, receiving yardage. Nothing was under 70 yards. He had 2 games of 90 plus. He had 2 games of 100. 111 topped him out. Watching what he did at the end of the season, and he had a little bit of hype coming out of USC, and I think the team he was playing on had a big factor to do with it. Sure, if you're one of the only games in town, but you did have again, I always joke and call him a mannequin, but Jared Goff is still, he's a quarterback that was in a Super Bowl, so he must be doing a little bit of something right. They may be looking to move on from him and just using him as a placeholder, but to watch what he did, and I think I have him at 22 in our rankings, and I feel like I could be a little bit too low on him. I know they went out and got DJ Chark, and beyond that, I'm not big on Hawkinson because of the injury stuff, and I know he gets banged up a lot. Again, when healthy, one of the better tight ends, probably a top 6 or 7 in the league, but that always holds me back from him. DeAndre Swift, I think everybody's waiting for that. Hey, if he stays fully healthy, he's got that dual threat potential, so on and so forth. But when you look at the level of competition that Amon-Ra St. Brown has, again, you're talking DJ Chark, you're talking Josh Reynolds, who's a capable wide receiver, Khalif Raymond, who showed a glimpse here or there, Quintez Cephas. Like, you don't have a lot on that roster. Now, I have not watched, all kidding aside, I have not watched Hard Knocks this season. I know the Lions are up there. Dan Campbell is, probably could just make me want to jump out of a building and think that I could do it because he's just such a strong believer and motivator of his team. And little things like that do go a long way. I feel that this player on this team is one of those guys that, just like last year, I think he's got the potential to be. I think he's got potential to be a top 15 if he's used as much as he was. Was it just a stopgap because of injuries? Was it because of Swift and Hawkinson and they just didn't? Did teams not know the game plan for him? There's definitely a bunch of factors that could play into that. Like, he didn't go up against world beater defenses. His week 18 was against Green Bay, who was already mailing it in. So you might look at things like that. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I think that he's definitely got that it factor that a lot of these other guys, like for me, didn't have, that don't have. So if you want to know why, again, I'm going to take a guy, and again, I have him at 22. For me, I could move him up a little bit more after watching some of the preseason stuff. For me, is he borderline top 15? Yeah. I have the ability to keep him as a keeper in our home league of record. And, right away at the end of last season, I had him penciled in like in stone, so to speak. But, and a few things have shaken out through the season. But it's like, my God, like, I don't think you do see some flashes in the pan, but he doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. He strikes me as this guy that wants to be this alpha wide receiver and plays the game the right way. I'll use all the terms. But at the end of the day, I see him as having that potential. I don't see anybody really cutting into him that hard. And I think what that team looks at him, from what he did at the end of the season, they go, we got to get this guy to football. And they did. And now going into this season, it's going to be interesting. Is he going to be able to break double teams, press coverages roll to his side of the field? Are they going to take away basically from him and force Goff or whoever to go a different route? Is the running game going to be utilized a little bit more? Yeah, there's a lot of ifs. We'll see week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles, how things start to shake out. But now, at the end of the day, I think to have him outside the top 25, even to 32, is a little, a little interesting. And I know, like, again, you have guys ranked different. Again, we're not going to pick the scab that is Michael Thomas. I don't have him ranked, and that's just for when he starts playing football again, I'll see it maybe. I think he's a little banged up right now. But you have him past, like, Gabe Davis, Elijah Moore, bordering on, like, Drake London and Treylon Burks. And it's, do you not see him as a capable NFL wide receiver 1?
So it's not that I don't, and Hard Knocks has kind of given me a different perspective on him, just because I do see
getting hungry. You want some kneecaps?
Yes, I do see the determination on that kid in his soul, and that does make me feel like I could be a little bit too low on him. I think the big thing with me is, and you talked about it already, and I'm not going to, again, we're not going to sit here and beat a dead horse, even though we've already done that once. But, I mean, in the games where he killed it last year, he was a top 10 wide receiver 5 out of the last 6 weeks of the season. So in each of those games, he had double-digit targets. He didn't have double-digit targets prior to that Week 13 game against Minnesota at all the entire season. And those were games that DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson were both playing and healthy and averaging, both of them, roughly 7 targets per game. So, some of the targets that he saw were just, vacated targets from other people, which, again, maybe that's what he needed to prove to his teammates, to Jared Goff, to the coaching staff that, he is the guy, and he is the number one, and they should be targeting him, and maybe that carries over. But in each of those games, he finished in the top 10. He scored a touchdown in every single one of those games. In every other game that he played last season where he did not score a touchdown, he didn't finish inside of the wide receiver 30. So to me, that kind of seems a little bit boom busty as far as, if he scores, he's great. If he doesn't score, he's not really doing a whole lot for you. I mean, he only had, other than week 13, he only had double-digit points twice for the rest of the season in half PPR, and that was weeks 4 and 5 where he scored 10 points on the dot. So even when those games where he was averaging in weeks 4 and 5, he had 8 targets per game, he still was only able to get you 10 fantasy points. Now, again, I understand that things are going to be different this year. We can't just look at last year and try to project into this year. But I don't think that, him coming out and showing that, he can be relied on as the number one in times of need necessarily guarantees him of seeing, 12, I think the last 5-6 games of the season. Yeah, he had 10 or more targets in every single game. I don't see that moving forward as being the case. And I think if Hawkinson and Swift stay healthy, and if DJ Chark does add anything to this offense, there has to be some sort of give and take. And because Amon-Ra St. Brown was such a big piece of that pie at the end of the year last year, I feel like that's the only place to take from. I probably am a little bit too low on him as a wide receiver 32. He's another one of those guys that is a boom bust guy. You're absolutely right. He could continue on the pace that he was on the last 6 games of last year, or he could, sort of fall back into what we saw in the first half of last year. I don't necessarily think that that's going to be the case where he doesn't score double-digit points. I think you're probably going to have yourself a guy who, again, probably averages around 12 to 13 points a game, but you do see, a couple times a year where he's going to have these big blowout games where he has a touchdown, he has 2 touchdowns, maybe he takes a play deep or whatever. But for me to, take him inside, like as a wide receiver too, I don't think that I just don't think that I'm going to be happy with that type of boom bust as my wide receiver too. I'll take him, maybe I should move him up somewhere to like maybe where he's going at ADP, wide receiver 28. I could see moving him up a few spots. It's just a matter of he's going to be a flex guy for me, not necessarily a guy that I'm confident with or confident in to be my number 2 wide receiver, which, up at 22 where you have him is sort of what you're saying is like, hey, I'm comfortable with him as a back end wide receiver 2 on the season. So I think we're just maybe not off as far as we were in the beginning of the season. I am starting to rise on him a little bit, but as far as what he did at the end of the season, being the wide receiver 2 over those last 6 weeks of the season, he's not going to be the wide receiver 2 over the course of a year. So I don't see him being that high at all.
We shall see.
That is the beauty of fantasy football and the beauty of recording ourselves talking about it, because when we're wrong, man, we've got it all on tape. So we get to bask in our glories and writhing in our defeats, I guess, over the year. But I think that makes us a little bit more, hopefully makes us a little bit more responsible in who we're picking. The fact that we're putting our name out here individually and collectively as a, I guess as a podcast kind of helps us or makes us be a little bit more conscious of, our process and what we're going through to sort of evaluate and rank these players.
True. Again, and we both have our rationale or irrationalities when it comes to things. Again, I tend to look at, the injury history sometimes of people a little bit more, and you don't. You tend to look at potential, I guess to say, like where you see that progression that's probably going to take somebody up and over the top. And again, it's good that, we kind of have that abstract and concrete views on things, but at times, use the other person's argument to realize that, hey, once in a while, maybe you're right. Maybe you change me on something. Again, sometimes you talk me into, again, looking a little deeper into Sutton. I feel like maybe I have him a tiny bit too low, but at the end of the day, we agree to disagree, and we'll be moving on to part 2 before you know it, folks.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of fantasy football, is the fact that, you kind of have your convictions on guys, and even people who don't talk to each other, like, on a podcast or whatever, like it, just your normal everyday, the guys that are in our league, for example, like I'm sure that they probably talk to each other about fantasy football leading up to the season. They definitely talk, the day of the draft, we're talking about fantasy football all day long, and then we draft and we still have conversations, and everybody sort of has their own opinion and sort of sees things going a certain way. And it's fun to, sort of make fun of somebody else's pick. And then, those people who really feel, scorned by those people picking on them or whatever, they are always sure to come back at you, once that player has a couple of good games together, like in a row, and then they're throwing it in your face like, oh, I told you he was going to be awesome. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's fun. It's part of the, the kind of the talk of the fantasy football, and sort of, busting your league mate stones.
Bad picks. The smack talking is, it's almost half of the reason you do it, just because, at the end of the year, like, again, our draft is coming up this weekend. And you and Melissa and your family are always gracious hosts of all of us maniacs for, the sake of a day, and we appreciate it. But it really is getting together with people, or for some that don't, maybe you don't get together and you're just banging them out online with a bunch of people. That's good too. But as long as you keep that banter and it's friendly and respectful, to each other, whether or not you get somebody swindled on a trade is one thing. You might burn somebody's bridge that way, but overall, it's a lot of fun trying to figure out who knows more and getting lucky. And again, being able to turn around and have a championship trophy or a belt or something at the end of the season to show everybody that you knew a little bit better is always a good thing to have. And for those out there that haven't yet gotten to that level, hopefully we'll give you the info to get you over the hump. Again, like in our league, Pat, I think you're a one of 4, and out of everybody, only one of your brothers, Jaybird, we call him, right? I don't think he's won in our league yet. I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah, I think he. I don't know if he has or not. I'd have to look. I know that he was in the championship this year. It was actually both my brothers in the championship this past season. And Jay lost to Mark and Cooper Kupp, I should say. And
mostly everybody lost to Cooper Kupp. Correct?
Yeah. Mark killed it last year with Kupp. So I want to say Jay has not won our league or that league. I know the other league that I'm in with him, that is a lot of the same guys that are in our league of record. Jay has won that league once and been to the championship game a few times. So he's always right on the edge, and Jay definitely knows what he's talking about. I think, as he's getting a little bit older and having more kids and getting a little bit more responsible, I don't think he makes as much time for fantasy football as he used to. So it's a little bit difficult, for him to kind of stay up with some of the guys like you and I, who, think about it and talk about it nonstop, which is kind of ridiculous for grown men to do this, but that's what we do. So
just because you're grown up doesn't mean you're mature, Pat.
That is absolutely true. All right. Well, before we go, let me just real quick, if you want to follow us on social media, we are both on Twitter at the 9route1 and at Scott from Delco. Please go on and check out our website. We've added a couple new articles, added some content for our sponsors over at Mickey's. So check that out. There's actually a link to a contact sheet. If you're looking to do your draft at Mickey's, you can contact them right through our website, which is www.the9routeFFB.com. Also, one more time, don't forget about that signed Darius Slay jersey that we're giving away. All you have to do is follow and review the show. Send us screenshots of both the follow and the review with your full name to the 9routeFFB@gmail.com. Get entered in that contest today. We are going to be picking the winner soon, so please do not miss out on that contest. It is open to everybody. So if you are listening to this in Canada or wherever, we will ship it to you. We'll pay the extra cost to ship you the jersey. Just get yourself in and get yourself entered. Anything you got before we head out?
No, I think that pretty much does it. Folks, again, we appreciate you listening and supporting us. Jump into that jersey contest. Again, we have that Darius Slay autographed jersey. Again, check in with us for that. We definitely want to look to do that giveaway and move on to a couple more maybe through the season. And again, we just appreciate everybody listening to us. Mickey's, as always, appreciate your help with everything. And we'll see you in the next one, folks. Peace.